Hi, I'm just going to talk to you today about the National Standards for Quality online courses. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the introduction, which is right here. And it says, the mission of the International Association for K through 12 Online Learning is to ensure all students have access to world-class education and quality online learning opportunities that prepare them for a lifetime of success. This mission really is what online learning is all about. It's about providing success for students regardless of where they are in the world and regardless of whatever their situation is in terms of time. So this is just to make sure that accessibility is for everybody and one of the biggest areas of potential for online learning. So I'm on page 4 here. I'm going to scroll down to a page here, page 5, that describes blended learning. Chances are, if you're a principal, you are teaching in a blended learning environment in which you have a combination of face-to-face classes and interaction between students and teachers, as well as online learning. One of the things you need to realize if you have blended learning is that it might change a number of things at your school. It might mean that you have to examine the technological infrastructure of your school. It might mean that you have to examine the way that teachers are teaching, how they're actually planning their lessons to become more student-centered, more collaborative, to learn through active learning. You're going to see these themes in particular when you start to explore blended learning. And I highly encourage you, if you are using a platform such as Moodle or Canvas, to learn a little bit more about how these processes work, and also to realize what it is that your role is going to play in that whole infrastructure of blended learning. To help guide you with this, there is a chart that is included in the national standards, and it's on page 7. So once you turn to page 7, you have this wonderful little chart to help you kind of define where your school is in terms of blended learning. For example, up here at the top, you see this little space here that says level blended learning. Over here it says less online instruction. In the middle is more online instruction, and then mostly online instruction. And what you're going to see is that there's going to be a change in these areas over here on the left column based on the level of online instruction that your school is going to have. So if you scroll down, you see characteristics of instructional models. You also see that student-centered instruction is going to change depending on what your online instruction level is, as well as school considerations. All of these areas a principal needs to be very aware of before choosing the blended online or blended learning model that he or she wants to have. And so this chart is there for your reference if you're a principal, and I highly encourage you to take a quick snapshot of it, or possibly to just review it in the document and use that as your own guide as to the level that you want to have your particular school to have. Finally, we're going to scroll down a little bit further to section A. This is the first area for observation when you are trying to create a quality online learning environment at your school. Of course, we want to make sure that the content is there. Because just because you have an online learning environment doesn't mean that you don't have content, especially academic content, and standards that you need to address. In fact, this is even more prominent. It's extremely important to make sure that your online course content is fully aligned with the Common Core standards or with your advanced placement courses or your IB curriculum. Teachers will find this much harder, as well as students later on down the road, if they are taking a course that's not fully aligned. Why? Because especially if you are an AP or an IB school, you're going to notice that later on down the road, when you start to plan for those particular assessments, your students will not have the skills if your content is not specifically stated and aligned. So this is one area that principals really need to be aware of as they are going along planning and running and managing their school. Some other basic things such as a syllabus, course goals, all of those things need to be very clearly articulated if you're doing an online course. And in fact, they need to be even more so. You can't afford to have, for example, a messy atlas or a messy blog or a messy Canvas. It has to be very clearly defined if that is the mode that you're going to use. You also need to consider, if you're a principal, How are you going to deal with issues of academic integrity? What guidelines are you going to set for your teachers and for your students in terms of protecting copyright laws or in terms of making sure that students aren't copying work? So make sure that whatever platform you use addresses those issues. The second section is instructional design. As principals, you are responsible, as you already know, for making sure that teachers comply with effective instructional design. And teachers may think that they know what this looks like already, but once they shift to a more online model, they may find that their design also needs to change. Direct instruction and the way that direct information is given needs to change. Since you have face-to-face interaction, you may end up finding that your teachers should be using that time for collaborative exercises, for discussions, for actual social interaction, for constructing meaning to things. Whereas you might find that the content and the direct instruction will end up taking place using your online platforms such as Moodle or Canvas. You might end up seeing that your teachers can post videos doing their lectures instead of wasting time in class doing lectures, while you can really focus in the classroom on engagement, which is really what needs to happen when students come to the classroom. So this concept of the flipped classroom might be a part of your blended learning environment. So this particular standard addresses all students' needs and varied ways to learn and master the curriculum by having your content on your online platform. That allows students to be self-paced. It allows them to review as many times as they need to review until they master a concept. And that is one aspect of online learning that has tremendous potential. Currently, if you're struggling to meet the needs of your resource learners, for example, this allows them to have additional resources that they can use to review independently. And also ask questions without interrupting the class time or slowing things down. So this is one aspect of how you can do this. Another way of having these materials online is that if you have very mobile students, the students can also keep up with the classwork that you're doing in the face-to-face classwork, because the content will still be online for them to review. As I mentioned before, structure and organization also has to happen in the instructional design. Is it intuitive? Can a student navigate each unit quite easily and know what's happening in each unit? Because if that does not happen, then the student becomes very confused while doing online learning. So it has to be very clearly articulated and organized. Active learning, as mentioned in number 3 right here, is one of the key components of any online learning that takes place. What is your engagement level? How are you going to have the students interact? You don't want the content to just be, hey, watch this video, here, watch this lecture. How are they going to engage with it? How are they going to interact with that information? And you'll find that that needs to be embedded in your instructional design if you actually want the program to be successful. So we're talking about engagement and accommodation. How are you going to deal with readability levels? All of those things you're going to consider in instructional design. Communication and interaction is also key, because many teachers worry, how am I going to get the same quality of interaction with my students if I am teaching them at a distance? How is that going to work? And so it's really important that communication and interaction is a key component, and that frequent feedback about student progress, as mentioned right here, also happens, because students will become very, very frustrated if they do not have a way of interacting with their teachers when they have questions or need help. And they also need a way to tell you how the program is doing, because many times students can tell you more information than you know as the teacher about the usability of your content, your structure, your platform. So you need to build in some of these things, including classroom management. For example, this one, number 9, talks about confirming whether students are engaged. How are you going to know that if you can't see a student's facial expression? So these are just some areas to consider. The third one is student assessment. And one of the things that you need to make sure that you're checking with assessment is that your assessment strategies are consistent with the course goals and objectives. You want to take a look at that and see, is there ongoing, varied, and frequent assessments? For example, It's very easy to know how to do formative assessment in a classroom where you can interact with students. You can observe, you can do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down, and you know whether students are with you or not. But when you don't have that face-to-face interaction and eye contact, how are teachers going to make sure that students are actually engaged? And that is one aspect that might need to be addressed with assessment and how you're going to deliberately plan for that in a blended learning scenario. So the next section is technology. And basically in the course architecture, this is basically about how to assess your technology tools that you're going to use, with a special focus for a user-friendly interface and for the operation and how a student is going to be able to operate it. The idea is to choose something that has a very intuitive interface. Can the student explore and figure out where to click in order to get certain functions done? Or is it a situation where the student doesn't know where to click to get resources, or where they don't know where to click to get assignments? It's very important that students can operate the interface independently. If they can't do that, it may be time to change your interface. So look for the tool that you feel is user-friendly and that is especially helpful for students. So this is something to address in the national standards. Finally, and this is an area that is very important, especially for principals. Right here, I'm on page 18 now. Course evaluation and support. Principals are especially responsible for evaluating how the course is doing overall, which means the principal needs to look for data, and the principal needs to know how to support the program. You need to know how to evaluate and support what's taking place. And take a look at number 2. It says the course is evaluated using a continuous improvement cycle for effectiveness, and the findings used as a basis for improvement. This standard really is no different from any other course that you're teaching. However, the way in which you're going to address this is going to be different. Before you start changing the technology interface or choosing PD for your teachers, it's important to evaluate the overall program, see where the problematic areas are, and then make choices accordingly. So that you know, for example, if you're choosing PD for your teachers, in what area specifically do you need that PD to take place? Okay, and what can you do for overall systemic change? So you're going to evaluate it, and you're going to make choices as to PD for teachers, as to changing your interface or your platform if need be. You're going to update your content, make sure that it's there, make sure that the teachers who are involved have their certifications. You're going to be taking a look at the student support that's available. Are your students being supported well enough? How can you change that? How can you use your current technology interface to make sure that that happens? How are you going to provide accountability for your teachers and for your course instructors toward providing student engagement online? So these are all areas that are very important for any principal to know if they're going to work in a blended or full online learning environment.